Hey everyone, good afternoon. I hope you are having an awesome day so far. I am super excited to be answering your questions today. We're going to be focused mostly on succulent seeds, but feel free to ask any questions that you have about any type of propagation. We'll focus on those mostly. If you have a question about care, I can answer that too if we have some time at the end. But I also just want to say it's been super fun to see everyone who's come through the Successfully Propagating Succulents course, which if you haven't heard about that, head over to succulentsandsunshine.com/propagate. But we've had a bunch of people sign up. Wow, got words today. A bunch of people have signed up so far, and some people have already been through the entire course, which is super exciting as well. So it's all available from the beginning. So whenever you are interested in watching those videos, you can do that once you purchase the course. So yeah, but head over to succulentsandsunshine.com/propagate for all the details on that. And now let's get to, I'm going to answer your questions, but the first thing actually that I wanted to do was show you my seeds that I have going right now. I'm just going to take a little field trip around the corner. So I started these seeds about, okay, we're going to flip around here. I started these about 2 months ago, maybe a month and a half. So I just put them in leftover containers. I've actually found that this was better than like the seed trays that I purchased when I did seeds last year. So you can see these are sempervivums, and you can see they're starting to almost look like little succulents already. It's so exciting. So I've just had these in here with the soil wet. This is coconut coir. I think there's a question about that, and I'll make sure to explain this too. So coconut coir, I've just had the soil completely wet, and then put the seeds right on top, and then the lid is sealed shut all the time except for when I'm making videos, and then it's not. So this is Henry's. Henry has some blue cactus seeds, and they haven't started yet. So that is something to note, that some seeds take longer than others to start. I'm also a little bit worried that these seeds maybe got baked a little bit because they were outside last summer. I was going to plant them and then I didn't, and so there's a chance that the 120-degree weather killed them maybe. I don't know for sure, but I'm hoping they survive and grow. So I do know that I grew a couple of those before, and they did grow, so the seeds are good. And then this is Jane's. So Jane's is growing Sedum hispanicum, and you can see there's just a few little babies right here. She like flooded hers when she put water in, so there might be some seeds like at the bottom of this, but I'm glad some are popping through. So same with her, with all of these, they are completely wet, and then we have that nice greenhouse effect going, which is what you want for seeds. They need a lot of water. So what I did to start these, just going back to my chair for a second. So what I did to start these was I put the coconut coir in the little container, and like I said, it's just a food leftover container, so nothing fancy there. I had some, and I'm like, ooh, let's give this a try, and it's worked out way better, I feel like, than the little seed starter kit that I bought on Amazon last time I did seeds. So if you have one of those, or just go to Walmart and grab some, super cheap. So I put the coconut coir in, and then I got the soil wet. So I started with wet soil, and then I sprinkled the succulent seeds on. And I was gonna bring seeds over here to show you what they look like, and I forgot to bring them over. I can do that in a minute, but I also have a post in the Facebook group about seeds, so just search like Cassidy and seeds. Or you can go to the sales page for the course, which also has a picture there. And I can add one to the comments too. But they really just look like dust. I mean, if I saw them on the table, I would have wiped them off and like thought it was dirt. So just know they are super duper tiny, and it's a little bit tricky to plant, but they work. So yeah, anyway, it's super fun to watch them grow, and the kids are crazy excited about doing theirs. Henry is a little bit bummed that his are not actually growing yet, so hopefully those start very, very soon. Oh man, timer keeps coming on. Okay, so let's get to the actual questions people have asked, because I want to make sure we get those first. So the first question was, how long should propagating succulent seeds take? So I actually went, this is going to sound so geeky and intense, you guys, but it was awesome. I went to a succulent hybridizing workshop 2 Aprils ago, and the guy who was hosting the workshop, his name's Kevin Vaughn, and he is responsible for creating a lot of the Sempervivum varieties that you guys are familiar with. I'm not very good at remembering the names of all the varieties, but just know he's created them, Kevin Vaughn, and he actually has a book called Sempervivums, and it's awesome, and he talks all about how to grow succulents from seeds in that book. So looking at his garden beds, that's the first time I've seen like mass production of succulents with seeds. And it took a good 2 years for those succulents to get to be a normal size. If you go back and watch the live video, if you just joined us, I showed you what my seeds look like, and they're about a month and a half, 2 months old, and they are just barely starting to look like little baby seeds. No, they are baby seeds. They're just barely starting to look like baby succulents. But I would say for succulent seeds to get to a size where they actually look like they look like a full succulent and they feel big enough to be a succulent, it's going to take about 2 years. So within a year, they will definitely be looking like succulents, and you'd probably be able to transplant them at that point. But it does take a while, as does leaf propagation. Cuttings are fast, divisions are pretty fast, but seeds do take longer. And then what's the best way to prepare the soil? So what I did is I just used the straight coconut coir, and I got it wet while it was in the container that I was going to propagate in. Last year I put the seeds in and then the water, and so I put the soil in and then the seeds and then I watered it, but I felt like it pushed the seeds way down into the soil, which is not where succulent seeds want to be. They want to be sitting right on top of the soil because they just look like dust. They're really small. They don't need to be planted under the soil. So that's all I did, was just get the soil wet. I ran into an issue last year, and I haven't run into it so far this year, with getting a little bit of like mold or growth in there that wasn't the succulents. And with that, I just sprayed them. Guys, the airplanes just know when I'm out here. It's great. Hopefully that's not too bad. Okay. Well, so with the stuff that was growing on them, I don't know if it was just something in the soil, like if my soil wasn't very fresh. I used both Bonsai Jack and coir last year. This year I'm just using coir, but both of them got some growth. So it might have just been from inside too, and it was in the winter. Sure, there was stuff going around my house. So in my experience, all you have to do to prep the soil is get it wet. You could sterilize it, so with those, when stuff started growing, I sprayed it with isopropyl alcohol, and then I sprayed it with water to kind of rinse it off. The succulents kept growing just fine, but I did realize that was a risk. Like, it could have damaged the seeds, and it could have, ruined the 3 months of growth that I'd had when I sprayed them. But if possible, just make sure that your soil is really fresh. Try and keep them in an area that gets good airflow. As you saw earlier, these are contained, and you want them contained. And I started actually getting more of the growth once the containers were open. I didn't have an issue with that before. So it does seem to be something in the air, but getting plenty of airflow through whatever area you're propagating will really help to prevent any problems with like mold growth on there. Okay, so then I'm gonna answer one more question from here, and then I'm gonna look at the comments and answer those there, because you guys are live, so we should answer those. So the other question is, do they require much light? They don't need a ton of light initially, but they do need some light. So last year I was growing them in the winters indoors, and I had a grow light on them, but the area that they were growing in my house didn't get any direct sunlight, or any sunlight at all. Like, it was a dark room. So I did use grow lights. However, you should be fine to just put them, oh, and Christina, I'm just seeing your question, so this is related. Yeah, let's just talk about that. Can you put seeds out in the sun, or do you put them under grow lights when you first plant them? So in that room, I had them under grow lights because they weren't getting any direct sunlight from the window or anything like that. If you're growing inside, if you can put them by a bright window, they will be fine. That will be plenty of light for that initial period of growth. But just like with any succulents, as they get bigger and they start growing, if they aren't getting enough light, they will start to stretch out. I know there was a question in the group earlier about seedlings that were like really tall and stretched out. Your baby succulents are not going to grow like that initially. They won't ever look like a beanstalk as they're like growing for those first few weeks. They will stay pretty compact. And it's as they start getting bigger that they would start to stretch out. So, yeah, so just I would put them, my approach is right now outdoors, because it's crazy hot here already. Crazy hot. It's 100 degrees. But it's going to get hotter. So mine are in an area that gets shade all day, but it's really, really bright still, because my house actually reflects into the area, so it puts some indirect light in. So I would recommend doing really bright shade. I would not put them in direct sunlight because it'll be a little bit too intense. Although Kevin Vaughn, who I was telling you about earlier, who hybridizes sempervivums, he actually would just cover his, he's in was he in Medford or Salem? I can't remember. So he's in Oregon, so not quite as hot, but he would just cover them with a cloth initially, so that they're getting some sun through the cloth, but they're not getting direct sunlight until they're getting bigger. So yeah, you definitely want bright indirect light, whether that's grow lights, window light, or just bright shade outside. Okay, let's look at these questions. Okay, so Christina, hopefully that answered your question. I feel like, swipe left to get comments. Sorry. Okay, here we go. I feel like the seeds have been easier and they've done better outside. I think because it's warmer, and like I said, the last time I did this, they were growing inside, and so my house, that area was probably like high 60s, because we keep our house fairly cool in the winter. So they've grown faster out here, and I think part of that has to do with more sunlight, even though they're in the shade, but also a little bit warmer temperature. So you can get like seedling mats to go underneath your planting, but I worry a little bit with that burning. I don't know if it gets that hot, but you know, you'd probably want to put them in a warm-ish area inside, and that should help. So, okay, Ellie's question says, I've got a question about babies and mirrors. Ooh, could they help reflect light so that they don't stretch? Could a mirror behind the plant supplement a grow light in the winter? Yeah. So the mirror would do a couple things, actually. So if you could do this with grow lights, like you mentioned. It wouldn't actually reflect that much light, though, because of the direction. So this is like the geeky photographer side of me coming in. If you have a light that's shining down and you have a mirror right here, it's only going to reflect just that little bit of light that's shining down. If you point it sideways, this light is all going to reflect back too. But having the mirror there will prevent the light from going beyond that barrier, right? Like it creates a barrier, and then it would bounce that light back in to your plants. So yeah, I think that could be a really interesting thing to try. I'm not sure how much more light it would provide. I think it would really depend on your setup, but I think it would be a really cool thing to test out and see what happens. Maybe I'll have to try that well, I'm sure I could try it in the summer too, but most of the stuff that I'm usually doing is in the winter, so that would be really interesting. But yes, definitely in theory, a mirror could absolutely help supplement the grow light. You could also put it by a window. So if you have your succulents like all along your windowsill, and then behind them, so here's the window, here's the succulents, and you could put a mirror right here, and that could reflect the light in. It would, you know, block it so you're not really seeing them depending on the size of the mirror, but it'd be a really cool thing to try. So yeah, I'd say try it. Let me know what happens. Email me or something and see what you think. Okay, Barb says, I live at 9,000 feet, zone 3-4. Wow, so you're cold. Very low humidity, having trouble propagating leaves. Any ideas? Do I need more humidity? Someone suggested the heat mat, as our house is 62 degrees at night, 66 during the day. Yeah, I actually think that heat is probably going to be the biggest factor, possibly light. Yeah, humidity too. So not that it can't be done though, because when I was in Utah, I mean, it was only a zone 5. So we weren't quite that cold, but when I was propagating in the winter, it was crazy dry because you're running the heater, right? Which dries out the air, and then there wasn't a lot of natural humidity anyway. So I think the biggest thing for you with propagating leaves is going to be putting them in an area that is a little bit warmer. So I just don't know about the heat mats, but again, you could try it. Maybe just try it with like, 5 or 6 little plant leaves, and you could put them on there. You could try putting it under a plate. So put the plate on the heat mat and then the succulents on top, or some just sort of, shallow plastic plate, something like that with soil in it. Because heat definitely makes a difference with propagating from leaves. And part of that also has to do with like the succulent's active growing cycle. Most succulents will grow in a very temperate environment, so like 70s are ideal. If it gets much colder, or if it gets much hotter, usually their growth will slow down. And so the same would be true with leaves. So I've said for a long time, like, you can propagate succulent leaves any time of year. However, you're going to notice the most growth and the fastest growth in the spring when it's warm, or like kind of just before fall or the beginning of fall when it is that really perfect temperate climate. So Barb, I would recommend either, I don't know that I'd recommend a heat mat per se, but you could try it. But I would see if there's a way that you can warm up the area where your succulents are. So maybe you put them in like a bathroom or something. I guess if it gets light, or a grow light, where you could like close the door, and so it could warm up that room more than it's warming up the rest of the house. Or try the heat mat, and then just make sure that you are watering daily, and that the soil that they're on is staying damp. So with leaf propagation, once you've let the leaf dry and you put it on top of soil, then you'll want to make sure that there's consistent water on the soil, because as that water evaporates, the leaves will absorb it. So it won't be humidity in your house per se, but it will be humidity like right by where the leaves are, and that will help quite a bit. Okay, Christina, that helped. Awesome. Ellie says, thanks. Up on the windowsill is where I have them. Yeah. Okay, so try the mirror there. I would love to see, you should post a picture in the Facebook group. Try setting that up, because I think that could be really interesting and fun, because it makes it look like your collection's twice as big as it is. So that's always fun too. Cool. Great questions, you guys. This is really fun. If you have any more, feel free to drop them in the comments. I have some from the request we put out a couple days ago. So I will just keep going with those, and then keep an eye on your guys' comments too. Okay, the next question says, I have a bunch of seeds. I tried to grow some out of my bag I ordered, so I didn't waste all of them. None of them came through. I don't have a grow light, so I don't know what to do to try again. I've heard seeds are hard to grow, and I'm scared to try again. Yeah, seeds can be a little intimidating. Honestly, I hadn't done it up until last year because it sounded like a lot of work. So I would say give it a try. If you already have the seeds, definitely give it a try. My guess would be that the seeds weren't getting enough light, possibly because they were buried. So make sure that your soil's wet, and then you're just putting those seeds right on top of the soil. and then make sure you have whatever tray or something that you're planting the seeds in, make sure that it is a closed container, so you just have that continuous cycle of water going through it, so it's always wet in there, because they do need a ton of water in order to stay alive in the beginning for seeds. Eventually they won't need that many, but the seedlings definitely will need water. As really as I said, many water, but anyway, it's all good. You know what I meant. Okay, the next question I only have a partial answer to. So it's, what are the easiest succulents to grow from seeds? And then how long does it take to grow succulents from seeds to maturity? So we answered part 2 of that question, how long does it take to grow to maturity, earlier, but it's roughly 2 years, I would say, until they're pretty substantial size. However, maturity is different for every plant. Like saguaros, which are the cactus that you see in Arizona with the arms. There was a demonstration at the Desert Botanical Garden by our house, and they were saying that when a saguaro is 10 years old, one that has been grown from seed, it's about this big. It takes almost 80 years for them to reach their maximum height. So maturity is going to vary. So for something that's gigantic like that, yeah, it's going to take several years. But with something like the sempervivum that we were talking about earlier, echeverias, that sort of plant that they're smaller, I would say about 2 years is what you're looking at to get like a decent, normal looking rosette shape. As far as what succulents are easiest to grow from seeds, this one's a little bit tricky for me because I haven't actually grown that many varieties. But as you saw earlier, apparently sempervivums take off faster than the cactus that I'm trying, and the sedums as well. So from personal experience, I would say sedums and sempervivums. But aside from that, I've had echeverias that have grown, lithops actually, or lithops, depending on how you guys want to say it. Those have grown really well. You guys know Chantel, who's one of the admins in the group. She has grown some lithops from seed, and they did pretty well. So that's kind of ironic to me because those are usually harder to keep alive for most people. So I would try, I can't remember if I posted a link. I will post a link to the place where I bought these sempervivum seeds. In my experience, they are extremely easy and they worked really well. So that would be my recommendation. But only because that's what I've done. So I do want to try some others. The sempervivums also ended up being the cheapest. So there's that too, because sometimes you'll get like 10 seeds for, $5 or $6 plus shipping. With the sempervivums, you can usually get 100 or so for $5 or $6. But yeah, so that's my advice there. Crystal just asked, why did you move from Utah to Arizona? Was it for succulents? I asked because I'm jealous of California folks and would totally move from Texas to have the experience they have with succulents. Yeah, so I've had quite a few people ask me that actually, if we moved to Arizona for the succulents. No, we moved because we were sick of snow, and also because one of my brother-in-laws lives here, and so we were just trying to find somewhere to move that didn't have snow, that was by family. I thought that Arizona would be a really great place to grow succulents, and it's just different than Utah. It has a lot of problems too, so you can definitely grow succulents here, and I do have a lot, but the heat is so brutal for succulents here in the summer that I would not say it's a great climate for most succulents. And I'm guessing you get that a little bit in Texas too, with the high heat and high humidity. That's just a little bit tricky. And here it's mostly just high heat, really high heat. So I have to be really careful about how much sunlight they're getting and where I'm putting them. So yeah, but that's why we moved, was because we were done with snow and we wanted more sunshine and to live by people that we knew and loved. So yeah, it was really it's been a good move though, and honestly I do feel like it's a little bit easier to keep my succulents alive here. So but it's been a learning experience, just like Utah was. I mean, I started in Utah growing succulents indoors, and then I got into the cold hardy stuff just before we moved. My parents are still up there, and they have a bunch of cold hardy succulents in the ground, and so it's really fun. Every time we go up there, I get to take pictures and see how those are growing. But yeah, it's been great. Yuko just asked, is it a bad idea to propagate from leaves and cuttings in mid-autumn? I'm in Sydney, Australia, and we'll have frost in several weeks. So I wouldn't start them outside in the middle of fall, probably, because it's gonna be a little bit too chilly. But you could grow them inside during the fall and winter. I've done that before. Most of the leaves that I propagated initially were done indoors in the winter. So it just takes a little bit longer. You have to pay a little bit closer attention to them, whereas sometimes when they're outside, you can just let them go and they don't even need you, depending on where you live. It's always so much depending on where you live. But yeah, I would go ahead and propagate from leaves and cuttings right now, and just know that you'll probably have to give them a little bit more water, and just pay attention a little bit more closely to how they're growing, and then pay attention to the temperature too, because you want to keep them 70, 75 is kind of that sweet spot where they'll do really well. Ellie says on the app House, there's a whole Lithops from seed discussion. There's so many people on there. I'd go there for advice if you need it. Yeah, that's a really great idea. When I first started growing succulents, I think it's House that owns it now, but yeah, it was the Cactus and Succulent Forum. I was on there all the time asking for help and getting questions answered, and there are some really good discussions like that. Like, there's some people who are so dedicated to growing Lithops that have a lot of great advice, because every succulent is just a little bit different. And so even though in general the care is going to be roughly the same, there are definitely some nuances, and Lithops are one of those that there are definitely some nuances. As in, like, don't water ever when they're full grown plant. Yeah, so guys, this is good. Yeah, Crystal says the high heat will be here soon enough, and I'm preparing hardcore for that battle. Yeah, it's rough. If you go to my YouTube channel, which is just Succulents and Sunshine on YouTube, you can see how everything died in my yard last summer, because when we moved in, it was all shaded. This wall behind me is actually my neighbor's house, and so this is like a north-facing wall. So my patio faces south, and in the summer, in the winter, the sun is lower, and so the house completely shaded our patio, and it was great. So I put all of these succulents out there. But then what I didn't realize is, because the sun is so much higher in the summer, the patio basically gets full sun all day long. So you have to pay attention to those light patterns, and they change throughout the year. So we put up a pergola this summer, and even still the light patterns are just really tricky, and so I'm having to figure something out with that too. Mariana just asked, how can I avoid getting bugs? So bugs are so hard. The best way, I feel like the thing that deters bugs the most is not letting your soil stay wet super long, which will also make your succulents happy. And then the other thing is airflow. I have found that you're much more likely to get things like mealybugs inside, where like the air is kind of stagnant, the soil doesn't dry out as fast, and then outdoors it's other bugs that kind of come in. So ants will carry mealybugs a lot of times. So if you have an ant problem, which we have a horrible ant problem here, mealybugs are a big problem. I just said problem like 15 times. That was awesome. So avoiding getting them, I feel like it's just catching it early a lot of times. So like trying to find good airflow, keeping your soil dry. When you get new plants, screen them extremely well, preferably before you buy them. Like if you're buying locally, look really, really closely at the plants that you buy, and also look at the plants around them, because you might not see them on your plants, but if there are plants around yours at the nursery that have mealybug or aphids or scale or anything like that, yours are pretty likely to have them somewhere too. It might just be in the soil that they've, you know, planted their little eggs. Yeah, they're rough. But then if you can catch them early, then you can treat them more easily. Because once they spread a lot, it's really hard to get rid of them. So definitely, I mean, yeah, just keeping your succulents as healthy as possible. Because mealybugs also like to feed on like new growth, and then they like unhealthy plants too, where they start getting especially a little bit overwatered. So yeah, that's, bugs are hard. I'm trying to dig more into like where mealybugs come from, because it seems like they just appear out of nowhere. But I haven't found a great answer other than they like dying plants in wet soil usually. I mean, gnats definitely like wet soil, but yeah. Guys, I could just like go on and chat with you all day. But I do want to answer Ellie's question about the pergola, because it's a fun story that deserves to be shared. So she just asked, would you consider making a video on how to make your pergola, or did I buy it? We did not buy it because we were trying to go the cheaper route. Because, I mean, and you maybe know if you've looked into this, getting a kit online to assemble your own pergola is something like, I don't know, $1,500, $2,000. And then to have one installed, to have someone come build one for you, it's like $3,000 to $4,000. And we're renting, so we didn't really want to put that much money into something that we may or may not move, like take with us when we move. So I'm just gonna flip around real quick and show you, maybe. Let's do this. Okay, so that's the pergola. There's my backyard. See, south facing window. It's 2 o'clock right now, and here's all the lovely shade, and there's the bright sun. So my husband built it from pine, so we used like 4x4s, 2x6s. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all it is. So just those big posts and then 2x6s. It was so much work, and it was so complicated. Not my project. He built the whole thing. The only thing I did was hang up the shade cloth and tell him what I wanted it to look like. And he put it all together. And he's been getting into woodworking. You can see right now under the pergola, that's a playhouse that he's almost done with for the kids, which is really fun. And then, so playhouse. And then he built this planter box for me. So I wouldn't do a video on it just because we already built it, and I don't think we would build another one. It was so crazy. And a lot of work. But I will say there are plans online where you can get them. You can get a plan for free. I think it was free, or maybe we paid $15 for it. I can't remember. But there was a plan online. If you look up like pergola plans. And we followed that, but then we just made some adjustments of our own because the size was different than what we wanted. So, yeah. I mean, I'm super happy with how it turned out. And it's been really nice, mostly for the kids to play under there. So, anyway, really fun. Guys, thank you so much for getting on with me today. This has been a lot of fun. You can always catch the replay, and then the replay is for all of the other Facebook Lives that we've done. So I did one on Saturday and one on Tuesday, and then we have today's, which is Thursday. I will also have one on Saturday, this Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and one on Tuesday next week, 2 p.m. Pacific. So hop on and catch those, or I'll throw a link in the description. It might already be there on where you can catch the replays if you don't want to search for them in the group. But thank you for your questions. Feel free to leave questions or comments, and I will respond to them as soon as I can. Thanks, guys. Have a good afternoon.